Good day, I'm Carlo and I am assigned to report about elements of poetry, literature, and film. So, what is poetry? Poetry can be defined as literature in a metrical form or a composition forming rhythmic lines. A poem is something that follows a particular flow of rhythm and meter. First element of poem is rhythm. This is the music made by the statements of the poem, which includes the syllables in the lines. The best method of understanding this is to read the poem aloud and understand the stress and unstressed syllables. So the next element of poetry is meter. This is the basic structural makeup of the poem. Do the syllables match with each other? Every line in the poem must adhere to this structure. A poem is made up of blocks of lines, which conveys a single strand of thought. Within those blocks, a structure of syllables which follows the rhythm has to be included. This is the meter or the metrical form of poetry. Next is line. It is a basic unit of poem. Line is a unit of language into which a poem or play is divided. The use of a line operates on principles which are distinct from and not necessarily coincident with grammatical structure, such as sentence or single clauses in sentences. Next element of poetry is stanza. Stanza in poetry is divided as a smaller unit or group of line or paragraph in a poem. A particular stanza has a specific meter, rhyme, scheme, and etc. The next element of poetry is rhyme. A poem may or may not have a rhyme. When you write poetry that has rhyme, it means that the last word or sounds of the lines match with each other in some form. Rhyme is basically similar sounding word like cat and hat, clothes and shoes, house and mouse, and etc. Free verses poetry, though, does not follow this system. Next is imagery. Imagery is also one of the important elements of poem. This device is used by a poet for readers to create an image in their imagination. Imaginary appeals to all five senses. For example, when the poet describes the flower is bright red, an image of a red flower is immediately created in the reader's mind. So the next element of poetry is figure of speech. Poets use figures of speech in their poems. Several types of figure of speech exist for them to choose from. Five common ones are simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, and understatements. Our next topic is all about the elements of film. So let me define first what is film. Film, also known as a movie or a motion picture, is a series of moving images shown on screen, usually with sound that make up a story. So according to Bill Whitliff, the writer's responsibility, the filmmaker's responsibility is to deliver as best as he can the intention he has. So, what is plot? Plot defines the narrative summary or story synopsis of a film. Here, consequences of events are arranged. According to Forster, the king died and then the queen died is a story. Well, the king died and then the queen died of grief is a plot. This wonderful quote refers to the plot does not include only memorable scenes, but also major events that move the action in a narrative. These major events gives us the feelings of the forward motion of the story. We came to known by these major events, rest of the story and movie ahead. So next is structure. A story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but not necessarily in that order. This great quote from Jean-Luc Godard is probably the easiest way to understand the importance of structure. Also, the pleasures of structure in the movie are more vivid and effective than the descriptions of any other form. From Citizen Kane to Psycho, Bicycle Thieves to Pulp Fiction, Memento to Fight Clubs, directors have played with time. The plot takes a turn and an audience is constantly challenged. Next is characterization. The purpose of different character determines the trajectory of events and the key to understanding the characters and their behavior. We are obsessed to create heroes we can look for, heroes we can admire and care for, whose victories are important to us, whose losses we hate to endure. Theme is a central unifying concept. A theme evokes a universal human experience and can be stated in one word or phrase. For example, love, death, or coming of age. Scene from great movies create unforgettable moment that has earned the status of iconography in the movie history. Scene is the building block of the screenplay, the most basic unit of which has its own independence or whole existence. Everything that happens in one place in the film is a scene. The moment you change the position or location, jump time, then you enter a new scene. So conflict. Conflict is an element that seems to be necessary elements of every powerful dramatic work on stage or in screen. Without conflict, we don't have a story that will hold the audience. Conflict is that engine that drives one story forward. It provides the power and movement of the story. Without conflict, the listener remains indifferent to the event depicted on the screen. No film story can come to life without conflict. The conflict is the bread and the butter of any film. Resolution, particularly in a film, the ending is very important because the hundreds of people react instantly coming out of the theater. At the beginning, screenwriters often make confusion with the culmination and make audience think that there is only one climax. But the main tension is the conflict solely of the second act. When it is resolved at the culmination, this create a new tension which can be stated simply as what will happen next, which lead directly towards the resolution of the whole story. Visuals. Among all of the above described elements, probably visual is the most unique one that is highly integral to motion pictures. Visual is another aspect of the screenplay that must be dealt with what the audience sees and how they see it. In addition to the story being seen as real and inviting, movie visuals transcend time and cultural boundaries. Moving on to the next topic, which is literature. Literature is a term used to describe writer and sometimes spoken materials derived from the Latin word literature, meaning writing form with letters. Literature most commonly refers to works of the creative imagination, including poetry, drama, fiction, nonfiction, and in some instances, journalism and song. Seven elements of literature. Plot. In your story, the plot is the sequence of events that takes the protagonist on journey, whether that's a literal journey from one place to another, a journey in which they learn how something came to be. This is the usual formula of murder's mysteries. Or as journey in which they learn something about themselves. Some stories may be all of these things. Character. The most fundamental of the literature elements, the root of all storytelling is this character. No matter what species your characters belong to, what their social ethno-economic background is, and what planet they should come from or what time period they occupy, your character will have innate needs and desires that we as human being can see within ourselves. The longing for independence, the desire to be loved, the need to feel safe are all things that the most of us have experienced and can relate to when represented through the filter of story. Theme. Theme is something that makes both readers and the writers a little cautious. After all, doesn't worrying about developing and understanding a theme take some of the enjoyment out of the stories? Well, no, it shouldn't, because themes are represented in all works of art, whether they were put there intentionally or not. Theme is simply the sum of what the creator was trying to communicate with their work. Setting. Your setting is where, when, and to some degree, how your story takes place. It's also your character's relationship with the world around them. A story setting might be as small as cupboard under the stair, or it might be as wide and vast as 20,000 leagues and endless gray sea. A short story might have only one setting, the heart of where the story takes place. A longer work such as novels will probably have several. Conflict. When looking at the event that make up your plot, all of the choices character needs to make will be response to the literary elements we called conflict. This might be a conflict with another person or a conflict inside them or a conflict with the environment. It might be all these things. These reasons we close the book after happily ever after. Once there no more conflict, the story has run its course and there is nothing more to say. Imagery. Imagery is visual symbolism or figurative language that evokes a mental image or other kinds of sense impressions, especially in literary work, but also in other activities such as psychotherapy. Next is point of view. Point of view in literature, the vantage point from which a story is presented. All for my report for today. Once again, I am Carlo. Thank you and God bless.